Record. 3, 2, 1. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome. Whether you're in the U.S. or somewhere around the world, we're glad that you can join us. You're on Baseball Outside the Box, the show that loves to interview baseball's best coaching minds who love the challenge, the status quo. And I'm your host, Pete Caliendo. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. As we always tell you, we're fortunate and honored to be in over 100 countries. Coaches, players, and parents that are listening to the show, we want to thank you, and thanks for spreading the show, because that's what really helps, is getting the show out. All we're trying to do is educate people as best we can by bringing on some great baseball experts. Special thank you to ESPN Honolulu. Folks, thanks for joining us. And today you have a great guest. And let me tell you, before we start, don't forget, go to baseballoutsidethebox.com for the audio. Go to Peter Caliendo on YouTube. Subscribe to both of those. You'll get updates every time there's a new show, and we'll stay in touch as best we can. Special thank you, obviously, to everybody in the U.S. and around the world. And now our guest, want to thank him. Let me tell you, today we're going to cover catching position, one of the most important positions in the game of baseball, which has been revolutionized in a lot of ways. New techniques, new ideas, great ones. We're going to talk about those, how to handle at the youth level, all the way up to the big league level. I know a lot of you have seen changes, and we want to help our coaches understand some of these changes and when and where they should be used. So let me introduce you to our guest today, Tyler Goodro. And I practiced that name a couple times, but he is with GoodroCatching.com. I want to say he has been recommended to me by Ryan Cienko, catching coordinator with the Los Angeles Dodgers, one of the best in the business. And when he recommends somebody, we know we got a top-notch person here. Listen, Tyler played 5 years with the Dodgers and independent baseball, associate scout currently with the Phillies. He has been on the ABCA Barnstormers, so that tells you how good he is everywhere he goes to work with the coaches, and also the ABCA Hot Stove panel, which you know is attended by a lot of people. So let's not waste any time. Let's welcome Tyler Goodro to the show. What's up, bud? How you doing, man?
How you doing, Pete? This is an honor and a pleasure to be on your show. I really appreciate you bringing me on here. I'm excited to talk to you guys and your audience about some catching stuff.
Yeah, this is gonna be a lot of fun, and thanks for doing it. By the way, catch the damn ball. I love that. That sounds like a Joe Madden phrase, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Make it as simple as possible. I think that's what we try to do. We, as coaches, we work with a wide array of different types of athletes, and let's keep it as simple as possible. I think somebody you know very well and somebody I know pretty well is Jerry Weinstein always says, keep it simple, stupid. And so why not just catch the damn ball?
You know what? And that's interesting, because you know what? It really is the best way to teach, right? The really good teachers, the coaches that have worked at all levels, young kids like you have an academy now, again, folks, go to, it's Goodro, but it's good and RO catching.com. And we'll put it on the show notes. But when you work with these young kids, that makes you even a better, like when you're working with 8-year-olds at any skill and development, what you do, you don't just do it in catching. Your academy does it in all aspects of the game. You become a better teacher. I spent 10 years in Mickey on baseball school. I started with the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds and the 11-year-olds. So talk about how important it's been for you to work with those kids and how it's made you a better coach with the older players.
Absolutely. That's a great question to start off with. I think for me alone, and I attribute this back to when I was playing professional baseball, because you're working with so many different cultures, so many different people, and ways to try to communicate to people that may not speak English, and so you're trying different ways to communicate, whether it's hand gestures, whether it's video, whether it's through different forms of communication, whether that's like a Google Translate. But as it applies to younger kids, for me, I guess it's simplifying it as much as possible. Let's not try to get too technical. We have to graduate after we have to master skills. Receiving for me is obviously amongst all that's being talked about right now, how catchers are being able to manipulate. Let's just catch it. Let's catch it in the pocket squarely. And there's various ways that we do it. Not every athlete's going to adapt, immediately to what you're trying to teach them. And so that's the thing. It's slow before you go, and let's just try to break it down, make sure that people understand what the message is, what's the mission, what's the goal. Baseball is a results driven game. And but there's always platforms that we can build for our players, and to get them to really accustom themselves to challenges that they're going to face over time. That's kind of long-winded, but for me, it's as simple as possible. Try to make the game fun. I think that we lose sight of that too when we're working with younger kids. We demand when we should just say, hey, there's opportunities. Let's try certain things. We can and could do certain things, and instead of we should do this. And I think that's the thing, is everybody's different. They come in all shapes and sizes for me. So yeah, I mean, it's a unique position. I think it's the best position on the field. I'm biased towards that, but there's a lot of skill there. There's a lot of skill that needs to be had, and we need not to rush people through this. And I think you mentioned Ryan Cienko, and Sinks and I have had long conversations. It's getting to understand the athlete. He works with men, and granted, there's amateur players involved with that, depending upon their age, but he deals with men, and he has to find ways to I don't want to use the word dummy down, but you have to a little bit. So there's a lot of different things that we can do to make the game enjoyable, the game where you're learning different techniques, and again, just let's slow it down for them. We'll slow the game down as much as we can.
Absolutely. Hey, folks on Facebook, if you got any questions, just type them in the comment section. Thanks for joining us. We're talking catching position, but obviously coaching also at the younger levels all the way to the big league level. Tyler, the other area that, as you talk about that, let's just take hypothetically a young kid, 8 years old, just starting off, and I remember when I was a little kid, somebody had to catch, right? And some people didn't want to, and some coaches only picked certain guys. They didn't let everybody try it just in case.
Absolutely.
So where does a coach working with a young kid, this is a big question, could be a show in itself, but where's that coach start with that young kid? How do they find the catcher, and how do they start teaching them a very difficult, and unfortunately, I hate to use the word, but it is a little scary. I've been to beyond there when I was a young kid. I didn't like it.
No, I think that, that's a great question. And it's so funny when I have kids that come to me for the first time, and we're doing just an individual lesson, or, we're at a camp or academy. I ask them a couple questions. I say, for you as a baseball player to keep your mind engaged into the game, can I guarantee that you're going to get, I don't know, let's say 3 ground balls hit to you at shortstop? Or can I guarantee that you're going to catch 2 pop flies in right field? No, there's no guarantees with that. There's no guarantees in baseball, right? But I can guarantee you this, that you're going to at least touch the ball more times than anybody else on the field besides the pitcher. And you're going to make decisions. You're going to have to make decisions. And you want action, catching's the position to be in. Yeah. So I start off with that question to everybody. I can guarantee you this. Now, you're right. There is some pain infliction that you're going to endure over the course of time. But we have to do our best as coaches to try to take that fear out. I saw somebody make a comment on social media somewhere. It's like, if you're afraid of the ball, my best advice is for you to not catch. Well, for me, that's lazy coaching. Our job is to take that fear away from it. So I use a lot of different type of objects. When we talk about, again, introducing catching, I'm going to find the kid first and foremost. If I'm working with 8s, 9s, or, even 10s, probably, hey, if there's a kid that can catch, that's number one for me. You have to be able to catch the ball behind the plate. We'll talk about blocking, but I think as a youth player, you're getting your blocking practice in a game, because let's face it, pitchers are struggling to get the ball to the plate. So you're blocking during the game, right?
They're constantly blocking. Even in practice, when they're whether you call it bullpen or not, they're going to practice blocking constantly.
Absolutely. So, we always start with the catch. The catch is number one, and it doesn't have to be fancy. You're seeing a lot of, like I said earlier, a lot of catchers are manipulating the ball, but that's at the pro level, that's at the collegiate level. high school kids are starting to figure some of this stuff out. But to introduce something like that at the youth level, it's very hard because we just want them to stop the ball, right? I mean, my hat should probably say not just catch the ball, but stop the damn ball,
Stop the
right?
ball.
And keep it in front. And I think if we start with, again, just taking fear away, well, how do we do that? So if we're going to introduce blocking drills, there's things that I use. Like I use soccer balls. Two reasons why. Number one, they have to get their body over it. And number two, they can't catch it. So I'll throw one up in the air. We'll use a flat paddle mitt. And, if it's catch, like they just stop it with their mitt. If it's blocked, they know that they have to get over it and stop it. And along with that, to second that, the recovery, talking about blocking here, but the recovery is super important. We make them go gather the ball with two hands. You can't pick up a soccer ball with just one hand, right? Or your mitt. So we do stuff like that. We take, kids don't like, receiving, heavy or just a regular baseball, a 5-ounce baseball. So we have foam balls that can shoot out of our pitching machines. Something that I took, not to again, to mention Ryan. Ryan had a drill that we saw that he put an L screen in front of his catchers that are first learning how to catch velocity. So they take that fear out of it. So there's a lot of variables and varying things that we can do as coaches to do that. And I think that's number one: catch the ball, take the fear out, and then start to progress from there. Let's catch the ball. Let's play a game with our catchers. How many times can you catch the ball in the game, right? And tally that. Hey, afterwards, like award them. And I'm not saying hand out a participation ribbon. What I'm saying is award that kid. How do you do that? Play a game within the game. So those are some things that we try to do in our academy. We take footballs too. That's another one we use when we're working on blocking or taking fear out. We're just trying to make sure that the kids are enjoying it, they're learning, and then they can implement it into a game.
I think it is huge. And I'll tell you why, because first of all, like you said, the fear factor, that's big. Eliminating fear, teaching the skill, you get more confident in it. Here's the other part. For all our players out there, if you're pitching and catching, like you said, that's a lot more fun because you're active all the time, right? Nobody wants to stand out there waiting for a ball to be hit. Here's one that now, as you progress, that becomes also fearful. Because I remember when I was a little kid, someone said, you want to try. So I tried it, right? But didn't like it. I didn't stay with it enough or whatever the reason may be. But now you got the hitter swinging and you got to catch the ball. So there's got to be progression there. Maybe advice, because I think that's great advice you just gave on how to work with young kids. How about progression there?
Yeah. So again, in our academy, and again, a phrase that I heard Jerry Weinstein, the great legend Jerry Weinstein, say, you got to practice at or above game speed. And so everything that we've tried to do, we've tried to make it as game-like as possible. Even with our young kids and our older kids, we always try to have, if we have large groups, let's say we have 9 in a group, we have 3 pitching machines. So we'll have 3 feeders, we'll have 3 batters, and then we'll have 3 catchers. And what we have them doing is we take pool noodles and we'll have them swing in front of the catcher. So they're getting distracted by it. Every so often I'll stand in with maybe a fungo and I'll distract them but yeah, we use a lot of pool noodles. People like, oh, wow, that's kind of it. I don't know about using that, but I'm like, yeah, well, if the guy just so happens to connect with it, we're not, there's no L screens that are around and the guy can get blasted in the face. So that's something that we try to do. We wear strobe glasses for the older kids, probably more for the high school type age, college age kids. So we'll use strobe glasses so it's flickering in their eyes, so they're getting distracted by that. I think the big one is we always try to have somebody, when we do blocking drills, guys will block 3 pitches. It's kind of like 1, 2, 3, strike 1, 2, 3, but block 1, no runner on, block 1, recover, and then block 1 where the guy's swinging and he's going to go run and try to tag him out. So again, just trying to make sure that everything is game replicated as much as possible. And again, speeding the game up as much as we can as well. And again, going back to that drill we were talking about with putting the L screen in front for catching, that can be used for blocking too. So, again, just dialing it up and down, okay, moving the machine up and down, or even a coach throwing, okay, you see it down, let's go ahead and block. So those are some things that we try to add and implement during our training sessions.
Yeah, and Tyler, for our coaches, a lot of coaches. I mean, you don't have to. If you see a young player doing something well, you can go to the next thing. That, like you said, you're teaching individuals, so you're identifying what they can do, what they can't do, their strengths and weaknesses. Right. And you mentioned the blocking. I'm going to get to the changes in the game. We want to talk about those, but I want to kind of stay a little bit with the basics a little bit, and that is. We talk about the blocking aspect. That's another skill that's extremely difficult and fearful. So I think the coaches understand the progression aspect of it. Now, how about some tips on the blocking part? You mentioned the screen, because you got, and then you got to make the decision, don't you? Are you going to catch it? Yeah. You're going to hit the dirt and block.
I don't know who said this phrase, Pete, but it's one of the best phrases I ever heard. And it's almost like you have those aha moments, or it's hindsight's 2020, but somebody said or coined this phrase, the block is the extension of the catch. Well, again, another simple phrase. Well, what does that mean? Well, it's like a hitter. Okay, I'm in the box, I'm hitting, I'm waiting for that pitch to come hit, and I'm in attack mode. Yes, 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 yes. No, it's a ball. I spit on it. Okay, I back away from it. I'm in attack mode until I'm not, until that last second. And so we try to do we put out lines and we'll bounce the ball at certain lines. It's like, yes, I'm going to catch. Yes, I'm going to catch. No, I'm going to block. And so we'll do various things like that. We'll put up strings. Okay, ball above line, it's a catch. Ball below line, it's a blocks, to help the catcher try to track it all the way in. And I think vision gets lost in a lot of the things that we do. So vision as it relates to blocking, vision as it relates to receiving, and vision as it relates to throwing. I always tell, and now I'm jumping into something else, so I'm sorry.
Perfect.
But throwing, right? I think I see a lot of kids that are all worried about the distraction. They forget where their sniper scope needs to go, which is the tag at second base. They hear runner, they think, oh gosh, I'm looking at the runner. And then I look up, my pitcher's in the line of sight. Now I see two infielders converging towards the bag, and I forgot two things that are extremely important: transfer the ball and throw it directly to the tag as much as I can, right? But going back into the blocking, and I know we can jump into throwing, but going back into the blocking, we use a reaction ball. I think it's called like eyeball ink or something like that. I can't remember the name of it. But every time it bounces, it's a different color, and there's three colors to it: green, red, and blue. So simple association with letters, right? Blue stands for block, and R stands for receive, so we're going to receive. And green at a stoplight is go, so we're going to work on our transfers and our throws. So we bounce this ball, and on the first bounce, I tell the guys, just so they get a little bit used to it, and then we start to speed the level up, right? We start to increase the intensity. So we'll throw it kind of higher, and once it bounces, the first color that bounces, so let's say it's it's blue. Well, that means block. So we're going to get down into a blocking position. Second time, let's say it's red that hits. We're going to receive. So we're going to measure their balance. Okay. And then the last one, green, right? We're going to see if they can pop and go. So we'll then again increase it. Okay. I'll start to throw it, higher, and then I'll start to decrease the line so it goes shorter and shorter and shorter. So it's a really fine short hop. So you have to react quick. So doing stuff like that. Again, I mentioned the footballs and the soccer balls. I think those are really good.
The footballs, they'll hit and jump a different way.
Exactly. That's so that's again for lateral movement, I think, and that again going for the reaction. I'll actually use, and I don't know if you've seen these before. I'm pretty sure you have, but they're the reaction balls, the small ones that have kind of like the odd shapes to it. Right?
Bounce different. They use it for infielding too.
Exactly, and it's funny. Saw a couple guys during the ABCA conference, I think it was 2 years ago in Dallas, they were using it in their warmups. I'm like, all right, how can I take something like that and implement it into our training? And so I got a bunch of them. I do it very short, but so I'm not like throwing it very aggressively because I don't want a big bounce. I just want something that's going to be like, okay, that last second, I'm going this direction. Oh no, I got to go back this direction. So we'll use a lot of those as well. So I like doing that, doing rolling blocks, just to get them used to seeing the ball, staying down, and then react and get that mitt into the 5-hole. We do, we call it blind blocking. This is something that I heard from, his name's Josh Paul. I think he's a Chicago area guy.
Yep.
But Josh was telling us it was called blind blocking or Jedi blocking, where they would literally blindfold the guys, or I think put their heads down, and they couldn't move until they heard the ball hit the dirt. And it was a great progression. I don't advise it using regular baseballs. We use foam balls with those. And we're inside so you can hear the acoustics a little bit better. But that's something to just allow you to wait patiently to react late. And almost, Pete, I said this to a lot of people before, blocking's a mental thing more so than it's a physical thing. It's the want to, and I don't want to say it's necessarily the want to, it's the need to. And then you're just going to sacrifice it. So we got to get, again, going over that fear, probably 8s, 9s, and 10s. We're using those bigger size, softer balls versus using an actual 5-ounce baseball.
Yeah, and I love that you keep saying that, because with the young kids, again, folks, it's about eliminating fear so they can work on the technique, and then you can build up from there. Tyler, 2 things you mentioned before we get to the throwing aspect. And these are, one of them is critical. Well, they're both critical, I think, but one, we talk about visual. We talk a lot about it on the show because we've had Ryan Harrison with Slow the Game Down. I've been with Ryan all over the world, and you can't do any skill without seeing, right? I mean, vision is all skills. Okay, so the big question is, and I know at the high levels the ball's coming really fast, but when you talk about youth baseball, if you got a kid who's throwing hard, it's the same speed as you're throwing in the big leagues. I mean, it's just relative to the size of the field and the age. So what do you do visually to help them pick up the ball sooner? And you talked about receiving. Is there something they should be doing receiving wise to help their visual also, kind of combination of both?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been trying to find, and I'll be honest, I've been trying to find the right program, again, as relative to the age level, like you spoke of. What we do is we have these, they're called like it's like a web glove. And so we'll take these little kind of ping pong size skills balls or the rubber. So we'll start there. So we'll start them, and we really make them focus on seeing the ball all the way in. And I'm underhand tossing that. So the ball's not moving very fast at all, right? So the big thing is seeing it into the pocket. I use a lot of all-star training mitts. I think those are important too. They make a smaller mitt called the focus framer, one even smaller than that called the pocket. And there's one that they are not selling yet, but the owner of All-Star, who's a tremendous human being, Stan, he sent me this, and it's called the Keyhole. And it's a mitt, and I don't have it here, but I have, just to show you, it's a mitt that it has the edge of the web right here, but on the back side of it, it's just like, it looks like a fishnet almost. And we use a lot of that, and just to see the ball through the pocket. So as it relates to kind of higher level receiving and vision training, those are some of the stuff that we do. We'll take racket balls, 2 racket balls. We'll take a blue one and a pink one or a red one, and we'll stand behind the catcher, and we'll throw one off. And we'll first start with just hand-eye coordination. So, red might be right and blue might be left. And so they're sitting there trying to catch, okay, boom. And if I throw it across the body, they're going to have to go like this. Okay, I got to catch the ball here. So we'll start with that. And then we'll change to, okay, red receive, blue block. And then we'll put a line up there, red receive. So they're blind. They're blind to everything that's happening. They're not knowing. They just have to stay in the right position. We talk to them a lot about a lot of different cues to get them right. I always talk to a lot of guys taking their pocket and putting under their chin and having their vision out front, because if you have your hand out front, you're more likely to make an earlier decision than you are if your chin and eyes are out front. So we'll do something like that, using that vision ball that I was talking about a minute ago. There's a lot of variances that we do. And then I have, vision training as it relates to using your peripherals. So when you're working on base stealing or runners are, throwing. So I'll have two monitor screens, one on the right and one on the left. And I'll have one go and the other one will be stay, and I'm saying, okay, who went? And I want your vision straight ahead. So there's some different things that we've added in there.
You know what? You brought up a great point there, and I'll tell you why. Because I remember even now in high school and college, I understand why they do it. It's kind of like when you're sitting in a dugout, you tell your players, hey, you gotta yell back, when there's runner on base, because it's going to help your runner. Well, is it really helping your runner? Not really, because by the time he hears back, it's too late, right? I mean, even as a coach, the brain doesn't work that fast.
No.
So it does help the players identify the pitcher if he's making a move, what kind of move he's making. I get that, and it keeps kids in the game. But
Right.
what you just said is the same, because as a catcher, you can't wait for somebody to say he's going.
Right.
It's too late.
It's too late. Yeah.
That peripheral training, I mean, I'm not sure that's talked about enough or trained enough.
Yeah, I would agree. And go back to what we were talking about with the swinging of the pool noodles. When we do all of our throwing, I always make sure, now we have lead up drills, we have progression drills, we have warm up drills, we do band work and things like that. So when we get to actual, let's call it game throws, right? We always have a batter there no matter what, whether it's left and right. And we'll do two throws. So we'll do one with a right-handed batter and one with a left-handed batter. And we'll change location with it. But going to the point of using your peripherals, yeah, it's not talked about enough, and so like I said, we've tried to do everything possible. I mean, I'm in Omaha, Nebraska. The weather is not great here in January and February, I can tell you that much. So we have to be creative with what we do, and we're not going to get outside, and these kids won't get outside. And when they get outside, they're done with me with their training session because they're playing. And so we got to try to find the best way possible. So when they get outside, it's like, wow, this is super easy. We've sped the game up so much that it's just like they're on autopilot and everything's just, poof, I'm just sitting back and I'm Cadillacing this baby, But yeah, we put a batter into the left-handed batter's box, and we'll have that screen up, and it's like, okay, what do you see, right? And we're pumping balls out, and then we'll go boom, 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 ball come out of machine. He's receiving. And then all of a sudden, boom, that guy will break, and he better be ready.
Yeah.
He better be ready, right? And then we have runner calls. Runner, right? Like you said, though, and I totally agree with you 100%. Once you hear that runner go, hey, it's too late, right? So you always got to be on your toes. And I think
you could almost see that early movement of the runner if you're working on it. Hey, listen, I know we got a lot more to cover, and we only got so much time. You got a schedule also. I could be like Joe Rogan and go 3 hours, not a problem. I'm not as good as Joe, but he does.
I prefer to listen to you.
Thank you. Hey, the other aspect of all this when it comes to vision and blocking is the stance, because with a good stance, it allows you to do better things. And I realize the stances are changing. I'm going to get into that, but I want to kind of give the audience a basic idea of a basic stance. And also in the old days, we used to stand up a little bit more, run around base. That was really uncomfortable. I mean, is that really necessary? Kind of discuss a little of that.
Yeah, I always go back to, so my last year of playing and wearing the tools of intelligence was 2013. And in 2014, you started to see a shift as it relates to the catcher skill set and what was high priority for catcher skill set. It was, can he throw, and can he call a game? Can he manage a game?
Mhm.
And catch and throw guys, nothing was really talked about when it came to receiving. And I think where the shift came in is, okay, how are we protecting 90 feet? You hear about defensive run saves for outfielders, infielders, and catchers, and even pitchers too. And they have a whole plethora of different statistics. From the catching standpoint, I think people started to realize the value isn't so much in the throwing or the blocking, it's more in the receiving. And you're going to receive 150 balls a game. And, can you marginalize the pitch where you can move it just a tick, and can you gain not just only probability, so the next time that pitch is thrown in that spot, you're increasing that probability of it being called a strike, but are you gaining an extra strike, which is in turn decreasing pitch counts, which is elongating your pitcher's innings, which is arguably why the guy should be on the mound. It's
Right.
not for wins and losses. It should be, how many innings can he throw in a year?
Yeah.
And so I think that's where the shift came from. Okay, these guys, pitchers are starting to throw, and then I think it goes into a whole lot of other things: effective velocity versus perceived velocity. I think Perry Husband talks about a lot of that, and I think it's amazing. I think catchers should be more in tune to that. We can talk about game calling there too, but now you're starting to see where the zone was east to west, and guys were being able to sit outside, I think about Eddie Perez when he was catching Greg Maddux, right? And I mean, Greg Maddux could hit a sunflower seed off a tee anytime he wanted, but he got those calls, and we were extending. It was just unfair. Now you're seeing guys that are high spin rate guys. Well, what does that mean? Well, the ball's spinning much faster, tighter, and you don't know if it's going to go up, down, and it's going to have a late sink or even a turbo sink or what. But guys are throwing harder, so let's elevate. So even if the guy's throwing 100 at you, okay, and it's up by your eyes, that's 105. If he throws it, 100, down at your knees, well, that's 95 still, and that's a hard pitch to get under and try to get something on a line to the outfield. So again, I think what you're seeing is now we're attacking the bottom of the zone, because me as a hitter, I'm 6'4". It's very hard for me to get my hands down there and under the ball. I want something a little bit more elevated, not too elevated, but pitching guys are now throwing north and south. So now, yeah, you're right. You're seeing a lot of change to the stance. Well, that's making a lot of people angry. And I say a lot of people, I'm talking about the guys that maybe they're the ex big leaguers that wanted to catch that way, right? Oh man, I could have caught for 20 more years if I didn't.
Absolutely.
But I think about my last game, my knees were tired. My low back was hurt because I was flat backed like this. My neck hurt because I'm trying to do this to see the ball underneath it. So I think there's a lot of good about it. But I don't think it's just, and when I say there's a lot of good about it, I'm talking about the one knee setups that everybody's going nuts over.
And let me ask you about, Tyler, no, let me ask you about that, because I think I want to try to clarify for coaches that are still thinking about this. When you got one knee, or you got a different stance that's out, whatever it may be, something different that feels more comfortable, gives the umpire a better look, which I think is important. I umpired for 14 years. I love to have a better look at it, and I don't like guys jumping up or too high.
Right.
But, even though they're in different positions, they're anticipating that block ball. They're anticipating that receiving and transfer. So it's not like they're in a position where they can't do it. In other words, it doesn't slow down the process, does it?
It doesn't. It doesn't. That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that question and you brought that point up because I don't think it does. There's certain priorities per each pitch, I think, right? And that's not to say, okay, I'm not going to catch the ball on this. I'm just anticipating the block, so I'm just going to let it hit off my chest. Well, that's not right. Or I'm going to give up on the catch because I want to throw this guy out because I want to do the sexy part of the game for the catcher and get my face on Sports Center or on highlights on MLB Network because I throw this guy out at second base. Oh, bull crap. No, that's not the case at all. Setting up on a knee can do a lot of different things and a lot of good things. So if there's a runner at first base, I'm probably more or less going to talk to a guy and say, okay, hey, let's try a bunch this way. Let's try a bunch this way. Okay. You don't know when that guy's going to go. You just don't know. You're anticipating when he might go. The dugout might tell you when he might go, right? So that's when they call a pick over to first base, but we just don't know. So what is it going to allow me to do? It's going to allow me to stay with the pitch longer, under it longer, receive it deeper. We should be receiving it deep no matter what in terms of if we're going to throw the guy out, but it's going to allow me to stay deep on it. And I want a deep transfer at my chest because it's a cleaner transfer. I can get it out with more accuracy. The more accurate I am over time, and with the help of my pitcher, I'm going to throw more guys out. Throwing's a team defense, in my opinion. It really is. It's a team defense.
You know, I see that as the same thing as Javi Baez because we got him in Chicago. I see him all day. Javi Baez lets the ball come to him. He doesn't go out and get it and then try to come back, make the tag. I love that. Now, the other aspect of the receiving and the game, I want you to address this because I know people are seeing it and saying, well, I wonder about this, but it makes so much sense. Most guys are starting with the glove really low because that seems to be, well, that's the hardest pitch to catch. So it does make sense to start low and come up, no?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think there's a lot of people that knock, well, that's not a good target. Well, it might be, and I try to do my best to research a lot of different things. And I saw an article, the targeting of the mitt is extremely important. Maybe the target is not the mitt,
the body.
Exactly. Or this pitcher needs to see his hand at this point on his release and allow the pitch to go here. The target might be the front hip of a right-handed hitter if I'm trying to throw a front door slider to the guy. That might be my target. It's not that. Is it where you want it to end up or where you want to start it? And so I think that's the biggest issue that a lot of people are having with the target of the mitt. Now, as it relates to, rhythm and timing for the catcher, timing's everything for the catcher. Okay, it really is. It's just like hitting. You have stances for hitting, you have stances for catching, you have a load for a hitter, you have a load for a catcher. But is my load going to be, up and back? If it's up and back, I'm screwed because I feel like I'm going to go over the top of the ball. Okay. So I always want to try to think about, here's my pen, but I always want to think about, I'm going to be pocket below the ball and kind of creating the momentum. But the pitch type for me is going to tell me how I need to approach, attack, and load and time to create a consistent reception.
Hey, speaking about pitch type, this could be a show in itself. And I know there's always debates, and I wonder sometimes because, for young kids, it should be like you keep saying, the progression aspect. You can't expect a 10-year-old, and even though they only have one pitch maybe, but let's take an 11-year-old that's maybe, or 12-year-old that maybe they use a fastball changeup. You can't expect them right away the first day to just call the game on their own. They've got to learn something, right? Sure. And then there's got to be some progression. But so what's your thoughts on calling games overall?
Yeah, it's under-taught, extremely under-taught. And it's funny, you say, people might have one pitch. I say they have two pitches, ball and strike, right? At the low levels, right? Because that's what it is. And again, we're trying to create consistency. I hear a lot of people talk about repeatable mechanics. And that's, that's a very ambiguous word to say repeatable for mechanics. Now because you're not going to repeat the same delivery on every pitch, because again, what we just talked about with pitch location, ball could go, I'm going to start it here, I'm going to start it here, I'm going to finish over here, I'm going to throw this pitch with a little bit more conviction. Going off topic here, so I apologize. But I think the skill and kids learning how to call a game are very, very they're behind, right? So I say that softball catching is behind baseball catching by like 6 or 7 years. And I think, as it relates to when kids get into professional baseball, they are 2 or 3 years behind where they probably should be in calling a game, and they have no clue. But it's so crazy. I've coached youth baseball myself. I coached an 11-year-old team way back in probably 2015. And I let my guy call the game. And it's time with everything. And time is probably one of the greatest commodities, yet we don't have a lot of it. So it's very scarce. We have to be very diligent with it. But I always made sure that, whether it was at practice, when kids were warming up, I set my catcher down right next to me and we reviewed like the game. And there's certain things that, I'd task him to do. Hey, you're not busy tonight, watch a ball game. And then I want you to sit down. Something that I used to do a long time ago when I was in high school was I would go get a scorebook and I would have a blank piece of paper right next to me. And I would turn on, at the time we didn't have MLB Network, but we had ESPN, and I always make sure, and we had, we get Royals games here, so I watched a lot of Royals games and stuff. But I would tally. I would take, score, but I would also, on this blank sheet of paper, I would try to guess, or at least not guess, but I would try to call the game as the game was going on. Like, okay, was I right? Was I not right? And why? And then I had some fortunate stuff. I got to play under a guy by the name of Doc Edwards, who was a former catcher in the Yankees, or way back. He has now since passed, so God bless his soul. But I was a sponge with that, and that was the biggest thing that I tell all catchers: go sit. If you're not catching, go stand next to the pitching coach, and maybe you're going to be a nuisance, but ask him why. Why did you call that pitch? Formulate your own thoughts. And that's what I've tried to do in my training academy is we would do, I take snippets of games and I would say, okay, here's the information that you've got. You got, 3, 4, 5. This guy did this last time. This guy did this last time. And this guy did this. Right, left, right. Go with your pitching plan. This is what the pitcher's got today. How would you attack it? And then we would sync that up with the video. I'd run the video. And I didn't feel like anybody was wrong. And that was one thing I said, nobody's wrong in this. We're learning here. You're learning to make decisions, because I think that's what happens at a very young age. Yeah, you need a foundation. You need a coach there to guide you, but you also need to be lent those decision-making skills. And one of them is calling a game. Well, so if we were scrimmaging, we'd have our catchers call the games. Bullpens, I'd have guys call games. So doing various things like that, but I don't think it's ever too young to start to learn to call a game.
I tell you what, I agree with you 100%. I love all the things you said, and that goes into the next part, which, I'm thinking, we don't hear a lot about it, and it's not easy. I certainly didn't know much about calling games. During the pandemic, what a perfect time to watch ball games with kids and ask them exactly what you're talking about. What about the signals? This is something that's not talked about, kind of like the fingers you might use for one, different pitches, inside out, how you do that a little bit, cover that. And also when there's a runner on base, how you make changes, maybe some advice in those 3 areas.
Yeah. So, it's so funny. I'll talk to guys, the younger kids. Hey,
One.
Yeah. One. What's one? And then two, they're like, oh, it's changeup. I'm like, oh gosh, universal changeup is a 4 wiggle, and so so I try to, when we're doing different things, and I'll actually get on the mound, we'll move the mound up, but I'll pitch to our guys. And so whatever call they want is I'll go with, right? So as long as it's that. So 1, and then if I go in like this, that's maybe, inside to my left knee or left thigh. So we're going inside, pinky, fastball away.
What do they do for up?
What's that now?
Up. What do they do for up?
So I'll do this and then just up.
Okay.
That could be if you have a 5th pitch, like a cutter. I use this with a guy. This was our cutter. 2, curveball. 3, make sure that you show them, the circle, so you don't get, this, right? Circle, so they see it. For 3, for slider, probably. Change up, wiggle, cutter, like I said. Some people would do that for shake. I always made sure that I shook my head. I wasn't a big fan of giving a signal, because if I think of a shake, somebody might have 2 pitches. He might be shaking and going back to the next pitch, or, it's a deke, right? So I'd always make sure I'm doing this, there's some clever things that you could do.
How about runner on base, second base?
Yeah. So I would do certain things with my mitt, which was pretty interesting. Like I would curl my mitt in, and I'd give dummy signs. I would do like taps and stuff like that. And I'd do taps for like holds. Okay, this is a 3 hold, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, and then I would give my sign. But I would do like curl it in. This would be fastball. This would be, fastball way on top like this. I would do certain things like that. I would try not to overcomplicate it, because I want my pitcher focused on executing a pitch, right? One thing that I can recall that people can do is you can bang trash cans in the outfield, right? Or in the dugout, right? So you can, right? No, but chase the 2, like, oh, okay, here it is, 2, fastball, whatever. We would do this for pickoff.
And if you're on the podcast, he's just flicking his thumb, so that way different signal for a pickoff. Tyler, the other aspect of the game that you see a lot of Major League Baseball, and I know Dodgers do not teach this when I talk to Ryan, but when I was umpiring, I used to tell guys all the time, look, when you catch the ball, don't move your glove a lot, because I already called the pitch when it came across the plate, right before it came across. So, but you do see it a lot in the big leagues. I got video after video after video of large movements.
Right.
Talk about that, because are they getting away with calls with that large movement? I can't see that helping, because the umpire's got to think, I might go the opposite way if I'm the umpire. You keep moving it on me, I'm going to definitely not calling it.
Right. I think if you're seeing the large movements and the umpire is calling them balls, yet they're in maybe that strike box that's visible on TV, you're doing it wrong, right? You're not understanding how to use your leverage your levers, or be in the right setup and time the pitch. And I think, I know Ryan said this before, but the camera is 450 foot away and it's 10 foot to the right.
Right.
And, every spot you get, and the closer you get to home plate, the faster the game gets. And that's so 100% true. I don't think the television tells you exactly the true story. It's so interesting when you watch it from a side angled view. And I have a bunch of videos on my Twitter and Instagram that are side angle views, which on TV, it looks like the pitch was moved, and I'm sorry, you probably can't see it, but it looks like it was moved 12 inches.
Right.
When you look at it from the side, so if I could do it right here.
Wasn't.
That's all you're seeing. But on the TV, it's, that ball's tracked at the front of the plate, but it's going deeper, and the angle of the camera is down on top almost, right? And it's to the right. So you're like, well, what the heck? And so you get all these hitters that are going into the box. Well, yeah, some of those calls are pretty, not probably the best. They're probably balls for sure. But I think the box that you see on TV is a misrepresentation of what the strike zone actually is.
Yeah,
It's
you know
not.
what? And I've heard that from, without saying names, from umpires in the major leagues. And I kind of wish they'd just throw that out, because they're misleading, and then the fans are misled, and now there's complications. Then you got coaches and kids seeing it. So I agree with you. I think there's some issues that need to be taken care of there. The other part of this is also, as we talk about the umpires, it's not just at the big league level, but it could be at the youth levels, any level. You really got to know your umpire, even if it's the first time that you met him, right? I mean, or the first time he's calling a game for you. Sooner or later, you got to decide what he's calling, what he's not calling. It's not just balls and strikes.
Yes. Yeah. And for all the audience out there, the first thing you better do, and I'm saying this is a demand as well as it is something that you better do on a daily basis, is you better go up to that umpire and you don't call him Blue. You know his first name, right? And you shake his hand, tell him you're going to work for him, and be honest with him. And I think that's the important thing too. But yeah, it's understanding what the strike zone is. And I remember when I started to play a little bit higher level baseball, hitters would turn back and say, is that your top? Is that your bottom? Is that how far you're going out? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, why am I not tracking this information? I should know this. So if he's going to go that far, and of course, granted, catching has evolved in the sense that we're changing setups, targets, stances. We're pitching more backwards now. We're using more off-speed pitches. There's umpire reporting. There's catcher reporting. There's obviously all this data that's out there. Why aren't we utilizing it? And the big one is, like you said, is to know your umpire. Why are we not utilizing the umpire information and using it to our advantage? Now, there's a lot of factors that go in there, right? Number one, yeah, if we're calling a game, we want to pitch the pitcher's strengths that he has that day. And less, obey the hitter's weaknesses, but we also got to understand what our umpire's weaknesses are. What is he willing to give? And I think that's something that's underutilized and undertaught as well. What is our umpire doing? What can he give us? How far is he giving us? And I think it plays into your setup too. So I think a lot of that is hand in hand. So you got to understand, okay, umpire set up in this slot here. If I'm turned angled where my right shoulder is outside, so the umpire is looking over my left shoulder and he's blocked by that, most likely he's going to get a ball. But if I can side saddle my body inward, so it's me technically turned in, umpire and batter, I have more likely of a probability of getting called a strike, because that pitcher is going to hit me in the chest versus hitting me on my right shoulder.
And that's interesting too, because when you do set up, do you set your, like, if you're going outside, are you setting your body outside, or are you just setting the glove outside?
I think there's certain reference points that come into play, and knowing your strike zone real estate. Okay. So as much as those everybody thinks that those two white lines that are just right to the edge of the batter's box, on the inside of the batter's box, right towards the edge of the plate, right? That those are used so the batter doesn't step on the plate, right? Or he's out, correct? No, I think it can be worked to a catcher's advantage. What I used to do, and I kick myself now because I feel like I did it kind of a little bit ass backwards. I would go up, and when the game started, I'd kick those lines out of the way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? If I would have saved those lines, I can put my right foot here. I can know when I load my mitt or I load my target towards that white line. And if that ball's thrown inside me and I start to subtly move my mitt with that ball, boom, and I stop it right at the closest zone, which is, right on that outside shadow zone area, the black of the plate, we all call it, right? I have a potential of getting a strike. But if that ball is outside my knee, why am I going to try and then yank that pitch over? So the next time that pitch is even so closer to that edge of that plate, that it's going to be called a ball. So I have to know the umpire cadence of strike call. I got to understand my strike zone real estate, right and left, my angles. What can I give the umpire? Is he blocked? If I missed that pitch, maybe I thought I got it for a strike. Maybe I'm going to be honest and turn around and say, hey, I'll give you a better look on that one. I thought we had that one,
Good. Those are good points. And what about now? Am I shifting my body, swaying my body to catch a pitch so my head's there? Because you just mentioned you don't want to catch and bring it this way.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't think we want to sway our body unless it's back towards the center point of the dish. So I don't want, so let's say, I'm here, ball goes to my arm side. I don't want to sway my body off the plate.
Yeah.
The other thing too is this, and it's something else that we always try to do. We have our catchers umpire in our training, but I'll have them put their hands on their back. Like, they're like, why are you doing that? It's like, hey, you're going to feel it in a game. Just feel it now. If I can feel you move, okay, I'm going to think the ball's off the plate. Okay. But if I feel you start that way and move back towards me, I think that ball's coming back towards the plate. So I don't want to say necessarily we're manipulating the pitch, but we're trying to center it back towards the center. We're not trying to center it off towards the corner of the dish. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And folks, we're talking about the umpire-catcher relationship and understanding the umpire because, even in youth baseball, folks, after an inning or two, you're going to know, does this umpire call a lot of low pitches, a lot of high pitches? I mean, so start teaching your kids to understand that even as hitters, instead of blaming the umpire, they're doing the best they can. It's easy to blame the umpire, but, you don't have control of that. You need to make an adjustment. And I love Tyler bring this up. And listen, I brought that part about the swaying on, not only the swaying, but balls out of the zone, because I saw a stat the other day that at the big league level, and think about this, and I want folks to understand this, when you see an umpire at the big leagues, the catcher's set up inside and there's a strike thrown call on the outside corner and he calls a ball. Well, that's because it went that far across. You can't see it that good. 24% of fastballs in the big leagues, okay, hit their location. Now think about that, Tyler, 24% only. So that means they're not thrown in that area all the time. And that umpire also has to visually see the ball that's coming 189 or 90 miles, 98 miles an hour on the average. So, I guess my question in all this is, when an umpire doesn't call that pitch, we have to understand why. No?
Yeah, I think we do. I think if we understand, and that goes back to that relationship that you're talking about. So from pitch one, you better have a rapport with that guy. And, again, it's talking to him, it's getting to know him. It's being honest. I think honesty goes a long way, right? If you're going to sit there and BS the guy, he's going to catch on to it pretty quickly. His job is to be the judge. And I think, the police the game and to make sure that the facts are facts. And there's no gray area when it comes to ball and strike. It's either ball or strike. And, I think, again, asking questions are good things. It's talking, again, it's just asking, just get out there and ask and have the gumption to sit there and say, hey, I think we had that one. I'll give you a better look next time. It's not to be stern with them. It's just to be, he's coaching you and you're coaching him, believe it or not, throughout the game. I always loved, when I knew that I did a really good game, that there was a 0 in the run column is when I did a really good job. And then when the umpire said, hey, turned around and said, hey, great game. And it was either the, the bottom of the ninth, or the top of the ninth, that he's turning around and I'm shaking his hand. That's when I knew I did a good job. And I always said, hey, I'll see you down the road or something like that. You did a great job. I always made sure that I left it on a high note with everybody. Right.
You know what? the other thing I'm thinking about, because I'm thinking about things that happen at the big league level that are maybe a little bit different than we're used to seeing.
Right.
Something else is almost like acting like a shortstop. There's certain times where catchers have to backhand the ball just like
Yeah.
a shortstop does because they can't block it, right? Talk
Right.
about outside the zone, some of that training.
Yeah. So we do a lot of, so we put something on a board when we do our blocking training, we call it hockey blocking.
Hmm.
And so we have to have a goalie mindset. And I will put guys in gear and we'll be standing up like a hockey goalie, excuse me. And we have 3 machines in our facility, which is pretty awesome. Actually, we have 4 machines. One of them is just a little bit, it's a little bit nutso and it's too heavy to move. But anyways, we'll put balls cross and I'll just sit up there with 3 balls in my hand or 4, and I'll drop one in and they're sitting there doing backhand drills. We'll take ground balls.
Yeah.
I'll make guys, do stuff like that. We do picks, to me, Pete, and I can simplify this as much as possible. I always ask the guys, what do you think constitutes an A+ block? And the guys will be like, my head's down, my chin's tucked, my mitt's in the 5-hole, my bare hands behind my mitt,
Right.
both these are down. I'm like, no. Did the guy go? He's like, oh no. I said, it doesn't have to look pretty. I think we have this, everything has to look pretty, and this is the way that it was done for it to be good. And it could be the ugliest looking thing, but if that guy doesn't score from third base, right, and I had to backhand the ball and pick it or throw my shoulder at it or stand up and block it and knock it down, as long as the runner doesn't advance, it's an A++ block in my opinion. So we do a lot of different things like that. Again, going back to the soccer ball, I'll actually have guys, have a little fun, right? We want to make this game as fun as possible, but we'll put guys and they'll be soccer goalies. We'll actually kick the ball at them. Again, it's just to keep some variety in there, keep the guys intrigued and again, just keep them challenged. And that's the biggest thing is keeping them challenged.
I love the analogy with the hockey goalie because again, you can change it up and have some fun with them by being a goaltender. Because really, if you look at it, hockey goalie, catcher, there's not a whole lot of difference. I mean,
Right.
The hockey guy gets a ground ball too. They don't always hit it up in the air, right? It gets to the ice and it bounces, or it flicks off somebody's stick. Now they got to react. And they're using the glove, obviously. Mostly. I mean, that's something you're seeing in the game a little bit more. The use of the glove hand more by itself than not going together. You're also seeing in other positions outside the zone area because of the reach.
I agree. Catching in baseball in general is a one-handed position, position and sport, right? And that's the one thing that I talk about. I'm not a big believer in, and the only reason why I say this is because working with, when I was in the Dodgers camp, Travis Barberi was his name. He goes, why do you want to put your hand here?
Behind the glove.
Behind your glove, right? And he goes, you're more apt to go catch it and move whole body towards the pitch. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. He goes, and plus, if you do extend away from the mitt, what's exposed? And I'm like, your bare hand. So we were always taught to tuck it, kind of make a fist and tuck it in between our hip bone and our gut. And he goes, unlikely that you're going to do that. And the other purpose is because when you go to block, not that this is a really big factor, this bare hand, when you go to block, but it's actually behind the mitt because you're just going down to the ground. The other factor is this, when it relates to throwing, not having your hand behind there. If I move here, I'm thinking my top half is going towards the ball, which makes a longer throw. We want to go A to B, not A to B to C. And I think about alignment. So we talk about raking the ball back towards the hand position. I know we talked a lot about Ryan. We mentioned Ryan a lot. I think I've heard Ryan say you want to try to clap your hands together with it. So I'm not going to clap my hands very loudly if I have 2 hands here. I'm going to clap them loud when I'm raking across or ball comes here. So I'm just not a big believer of hand behind mitt because I think it can create a lot of not so good habits.
Oh, well said. I love it. Hey, there's so much to catch. Obviously, this can be like we talked about 3 hours easily,
Yeah.
but and we're going to keep it to a limit here. The other part of it is, catchers. I know at the higher levels, you got a lot of training going on. We get that. Now, if you're a travel program and you're, working out, 6, 7 months, you got a lot of training. You shouldn't have excuses. Your catchers should get a lot of work. But there's a lot of teams that their catchers don't have time to get a lot of work in. And I get it. We got to put the onus on kids. They got to do work on their own too. That's a big deal. But how about, I think catching batting practice, even though they may look at it as, oh, I'm just catching batting practice, but you're really not. You're getting a lot of work.
Yes. Yeah. So again, going back into the late Doc Edwards, one of my first managers, actually, Doc would always he was so old school. I was playing with him down in Texas, and the Texas heat, and just even June, we don't even have to get to August, but even June, it was super hot. And so we're the only team in that league down there. It was a Texas league, and we're wearing pants for batting practice. That's how old school this guy was. But he would make his catchers catch BP.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a good thing. Number one, it conditions your legs, not just outside, catching bullpens, but it conditions your legs. And I would always have, some of our catchers, I helped out with a couple of high school programs around here. I'd always have our catchers. I don't need you to feed me a ball. If I'm that lazy where I have to have somebody toss me a ball, I shouldn't be coaching, right? I'm setting a bad example. So I'd actually have, and what are pitchers for if they're not shagging in the outfield, right? I want my outfielders taking the fly balls, not my pitchers. But I would put the catchers at third base, shortstop, third base, I'd have them alternate. Third base, they're going to get the actual throw across. So I'd have them sit. We'd hit them ground balls, very fine fungo with the ground ball. So they're taking their throws. I'd have a catcher out at second base when the shortstop or the second baseman wasn't taking feeds. They'd be working on transfer footwork.
Love it.
And then the guy at shortstop, he'd be working on tag plays and blocks. So I just, there's time and a place for somebody to toss you the ball, but I don't think it's the catcher. And we're always the last man left behind, it seems like.
Yep. And I love it. And folks, remember, we're not advocating that, right before the game in BP that you get your starting catcher all tired. But there's batting practice also, in practice. Look at the three things Tyler just mentioned that catchers can do during batting practice. So if you got multiple catchers, they can be rotating. Wow, great stuff. Love it. Hey, Tyler, you've been great. I'm gonna finish it off on this, and we talked about it before the show, and that's basically there's so much to the catching aspect. Is there something that you really wanted to discuss to the coaches, players, and parents in the U.S. and around the world? Maybe throw that out. Any last minute comments?
Yeah, one thing is that I'm going back into this one knee setup thing, and I think we'll never see the end of the debate, the great debate, we'll call it, as it relates to the setup position. But don't give up on it. Give it a try. Be open-minded. I look at it this way. A friend of mine brought up a really good point, and he said, just think about when people introduced the shift. And they moved a guy over and the guy hit the ball the other way. And I thought I saw your post the other day, which I loved it. You talked about guys are going the other way with the pitch. But when it was first introduced and a ball was hit, let's say it was a lefty was up to bat and the third baseman's playing in the shorts, in the sixth hole. And, you got the second baseman, the shortstop, pulled over in the second base position and, all this stuff, right? Everybody's pulled and he hits one down the left field line and he gets double. And then you hear that, oh, see, the shift doesn't work. Well, it's kind of like the same thing, and when it relates to this one knee setup, right? There's a lot of mechanical things that go into it. There's a lot of practice. It's not just popping down to a knee and saying, look at this, I'm Luke Skywalker, I'm the master Jedi, I understand how this thing works. No, there's a lot of intricate details that go into it. And I'm not saying that you have to do it. I'm not saying that, you know, it's the end all be all. I'm saying there's options. And why are we going to limit players with certain toolkits and tool sets in their toolbox? Why? That's the why. If our jobs are as coaches is to coach, develop, and help guys get on to, we've all played. We've hung up our we've hung up our spikes. My job is to make guys better, to make guys comfortable, to make guys confident, and that's the number one thing. I want guys to be confident with themselves. If that's catching on a knee, that's going to be catching on a knee. If that's 2 feet, that's 2 feet. There's no debate. It's what the player wants, because I can't do it anymore. I can only offer suggestions in my opinions, but it's about the player, and we got to stop thinking of kind of pronouncing and marketing our own narrative to the
Yeah,
whole.
and I agree with you because you got to be open-minded. Use a key word there. Be open-minded. Try it. Let the kids try it. I think we forget, and sorry about this, but you brought up an issue here. I think we forget that also everybody has different body types, and they're all growing. Sometimes the kid can't get in that position, so give him a better position to get into. He'll enjoy it more. Okay, so, and folks, remember what Tyler said. I'm going back to this. I mean, we're talking about you receive 150 throws possibly in a game, maybe at the major league level, whatever, different levels. And you're only blocking so many. So concentrate on the receiving, and the blocking will come also, but maybe the blocking is a little easier because you put them in that position. So Tyler, I agree with you. I don't know what your thoughts on that may be.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. Again, I could extend off a lot of this stuff. I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of opinions. I have a lot of things that we've tried. I don't want to say that I've ever experimented anything with a player. I've asked them to try certain things, but the more you receive, the more that you practice certain things, of course you're going to get better at, right? And I don't want one player, one coach, one opposing player, one parent to sit there and say, no, you can't, right? It goes back to like, you could do anything. It sounds cliche to say this, but you could do anything you put your mind to. Well, you can do anything the more that you practice it. And that's just the biggest thing for me. So the more, I think you hit the nail on the head too when you said the more that you receive the ball, the better your blocking you're going to become because you're seeing the ball more. You're going to make better decisions. But again, as it relates to coaching, as it relates to player relationship, let's do our best to try to give guys as much opportunities, options, and let them flourish.
Love it. Love it. And folks, remember, we're going to close it off here. Remember, things are changing in the game. So if you think just the one knee catching is one thing, there's a lot more things changing. Be open-minded. Talk about the game in general. When, look at all the different rules that are starting to come into the game. Boy, you better be a little open-minded and at least give it a chance. And then once you give it a chance and you see what it's like, then okay, you can I think that we're better off giving it our opinion there. I'm going to go back to the shift and end it on this because even with the shift, I remember we'd say, well, if I'm a right-handed hitter, pitch him inside, he's not going to hit it the other way. Well, I just showed you a stat that only 24% of fastballs in the big leagues hit their spot. So guys are going to miss. Right. So that's why I put that post up in Twitter, Tyler, when I said, I know we're talking about catching, but when I said, I'm starting to see guys even in batting practice. I watched the Cubs hit batting practice the other day. They're hitting the ball all over the place because they start to understand why change the rules? Why not adapt to what's happening and make the change as a hitter?
Absolutely. So, I agree. Yeah. I mean, you're going to have to adapt. The game's changing. People don't like change, but, we find ways to become more efficient, right? We find ways to make things easier for ourselves. And I think that's the ultimate goal. How can we make things easier? How can we make things more consistent too?
Perfect. Hey, what a great way to end the show. Tyler Goodro. Tyler, thanks, buddy, man. That's been, I'll tell you what, fantastic. Opened up my eyes in a couple areas. I really enjoyed the show. I know coaches are going to love this show.
I appreciate it, Pete. Thank you so much. It's been awesome.
All right, folks, that is Tyler Goodro. And again, go to goodrocatching.com. We'll put it on the show notes. And Goodro is good and then RO. Special thanks to Tyler. Special thanks to Brian Crocker, our producer with the Lineup Media Group. And special thanks to everybody in the U.S. and around the world. Don't forget, go to Baseball Outside the Box, the audio, subscribe, go to YouTube, Peter Caliendo, subscribe there. Hey, folks, thanks for joining us on Facebook. I had a lot of people on Facebook, and I wanted to mention some of them didn't get a chance. I apologize, but do us a favor. Check the shows out, forward them to all your friends and coaching players, parents in the U.S. and around the world. Stay safe, stay healthy. God bless you all, and we will see you on the next show.